as much as I tried to stay positive and as much as I tried to also sit with it, I learned a lot about myself in those moments. And a lot of that is how much can I look at the bad and try and take it as a learning lesson? How much can I find gratitude in that? And it's weird to think, but when you're in those moments, the gratitude of, I didn't fall today. I could put on socks today and be okay. I could go outside, even though it's raining, even though my leg hurts 10 times more right now than normal, I could still function.
Welcome to the My SGV podcast. Our mission is to capture and share the stories of the people of the San Gabriel Valley. We believe our diversity is what makes the SGV great. And no matter where you're from in the San Gabriel Valley, you will feel welcome.
All right, SGVers, welcome back to another episode of the My SGV podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you are new here, welcome. And if you are a returning guest, thanks for spending this time with us. We're excited to bring you another guest from right here in the San Gabriel Valley. Today, Scott is not with us because he's feeling ill. And he said he could do it, but he felt it would be irresponsible to be in here sniffling and coughing. So he's stepped away. So today, I'll have my dialogue with Tori and asking you, Victoria, of, the tie into the guest. And then the idea was like, have you experienced something or someone in your life who has struggled with an illness or something, and your mom had come up, right?
Yeah, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so there was a couple years, of dealing with that, getting treatment in like Spain and coming back right before COVID, and being there for her, supporting her, working through that with all the family and all that. So thankfully she is now cancer-free as far as all the tests show and everything. So it's great for her and great for the family that she was able to get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember hearing of it or learning of it, and like all these things go through your mind, and my older brother, I think it took 8 years to get a diagnosis. And during that time, people thought he was pretending or making, using this as an excuse. And I remember like that was a real big struggle for him. 8 years. And finally he was diagnosed with something called PLS, or primary lateral sclerosis. So the myelin sheath on your nerves degenerate, similar to like ALS, but this is more rare. I think like 500 people in the US get diagnosed. But yeah, it was a difficult time just to get the diagnosis. And then after that, like, what do you do? It's that is not curable. But there's a whole bunch of different things that happen with a diagnosis. I think it's perhaps can be both freeing and scary, right? Because now you know what's going on, and now you know what you can do. But it's also sometimes a little bit scary to hear. So
yeah,
I'm really happy that your mom is in remission, and I hope that it stays that way forever. So before we get on to our guest, I'm thankful and that today, and thank you, Tori, for picking it up. Today's the first day that Paris Baguette has sponsored our show. So Paris Baguette in San Gabriel, thank you to Jason and Grace. They provided the drinks here and the pastries for our guests. So shout out to them. And don't forget San Gabriel Valley Now. Check them out for your city news, events, and everything SGV. You can check them out on Instagram, sgv.now, or read their magazine on their website, sgvnow.com. Well, that brings us to our guest today. And her name is Kelly Grandmaison. And, in asking you before the show how you wanted to be titled or spoken of, you mentioned that you want to be an advocate for people who are maybe experiencing the things that you have experienced. So, Kelly, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, you guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here. And so, the guest is always tying in our little pregame. But before we get into that, what is your connection to the San Gabriel Valley?
So I've lived here my whole life. I grew up in Covina, and it's been pretty great.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I really like it.
Have you always been in the San Gabriel Valley?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, always been around.
So you grew up in Covina, and have you always stayed in that area?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've stayed in the area, and I've enjoyed it. I feel like when you're younger, you just want to get out, and you feel stuck. But then as you get older, you start appreciating things in it, and you start realizing, oh, it's actually really nice.
And for those who don't know Covina for me, like this is what I think of. It's like the 10, and there's like a Best Buy and a mall. But that's only because I don't live there, right? So like that's what I think of if I think of Covina. Is that Covina?
I think that's technically West Covina, but
Okay.
Covina is interesting because it's split up into so many different pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you can be in one location and think, oh, this is definitely Covina, and then you throw a rock to the next street and you're in West Covina.
Okay.
And it's like, what? My neighbors are in West Covina, but I'm technically in Covina. It makes very, very strange patterns.
So someone who's from Covina, what in your eyes is the difference between Covina and West Covina?
Higher population in West Covina, technically.
Okay.
But other than that, I mean, there's not a huge difference. It's pretty similar. It's pretty seamless, the transition between each city.
I see.
But yeah.
Okay. And what was life like growing up in Covina for you?
I had a weird life, and I know that sounds odd to say, but I actually enjoyed it. And I think part of it was because I was always in sports in Covina. I started in martial arts, so that was a big thing for me. And then it was really calm for so many years, just between the martial arts and between school and everything. It felt fast in a very odd way. But yeah, I enjoyed it. Every aspect of it. I didn't realize how good I had it until I was an adult looking back and going, wow,
Yeah.
this is nice.
You said it was weird. What was weird about that?
I grew up, and I think it's because I was such an active kid and I had so many different interests and was so curious about everything that it was, I mean, you couldn't slow me down as a kid. So it was between martial arts 6 to 7 days a week. And then I would love going to the West Covina Library and just reading as many books as possible or trying to get as much information and knowledge as I could as a kid. And then I was curious about acting and singing. So I wanted to do everything. So a lot of my early childhood, I just remember being so excited about possibilities and wanting to do it constantly. And the city provided so much of that for me, where I could go do acting classes and I could sing and I could find these groups that were just so close by. And it was easy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you in the public school system?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I only ask that because it's unfortunately maybe a little bit unusual that people still have this thirst of for knowledge and for learning, So what martial arts did you study?
So I did Red Dragon, so it was kind of a mix of a lot of different types. Actually, yesterday I did my first kickboxing class since being healthy again. But yeah, I mean, so I started in Red Dragon as a kid. I did competing in forms and weapons, and I was terrible at sparring. And then I started going into tricking and then doing stunts. So
wow, that's awesome.
yeah, it was a weird transition. But yeah, it was so fun. I loved competing. I ended up going across the country and competing in national championships and winning nationally, and then going for, as much recognition as I could across different states.
Wow. Okay. So what sticks out in my mind is this video of this little girl, yelling and doing this weaponry. I don't know if you've seen it, right?
No.
Is that something that you would have done?
Yeah. I was maybe 3'5" at most as a little kid with bolitas in my hair.
Okay.
And then I was the loudest kid. It became a competition where if I lost my voice during a tournament, it meant I did a good job. So I would be the loudest kid in the room just with nunchucks. And if I didn't win, I'd get so mad at myself because I was like, no, you got to get first. You got to do this. So I was so competitive. And my parents saw me. I just wouldn't let up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it fun?
Oh, my God. I loved it. I loved it. It would be crazy training hours, but I was so determined that it was relaxing.
6 to 7 days a week is what you said, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It was 4 hours a day.
Wow.
Yeah. Sometimes it would be an hour class. For the most part, it was about 4 hours a day of training.
So you're an expert at it. I mean, that would qualify you as an expert, that much time into something.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I started, it was my 7th birthday present. So they had a Pokemon shop where you could buy cards, and right next to it was a karate studio. And my cousins and I used to always go in to get Pokemon cards. And then I decided I wanted to try it. And at that point, I was really good at quitting things that I started because I was like, I want to try ballet. Did a couple classes, hated it. And then wanted to try this. I don't like this. And so when they got me in karate, they signed up for 3 months. And after 2 classes, I was like, yeah, man, this isn't for me. And they said, we signed up for 3 months and we paid for it. My parents were so adamant saying, you're not going to quit this. Sorry. And then I ended up sticking in it for 7 years.
What did you like about it?
I was good at it. And I know that sounds very like simple, but it really was that I felt like it was something that I just understood. My brain understood how to do the steps and I could memorize things fast. And it was a release in a lot of ways. I think as a kid, I had so much energy and so many desires to do so many things, and it just centered me. I couldn't focus on anything else but making sure that everything was accurate.
Wow.
Yeah.
That started at 7. You said 7 years, so 14. And did it stop then?
Yeah, I had to. I was doing stunts at that time, and I had gaps in my knees because I wasn't growing. I was training too hard. So I was stuck at about 4'11" my junior year of high school, sophomore, junior year. And I remember that they told me, you know, there were days where I had a hard time walking. And they said, you have to stop or at least take a break before you go in. And at that time, too, there was also that high school desire to fit in and make friends and do sports. And doing just martial arts wouldn't allow that because I had to train so much. So most of what I was doing was in Hollywood, and it was with people that are stunt doubles or stunt coordinators. So it was very separate. So I had to choose between kind of my health and being a high schooler or just pursuing this and sticking with it. And then I stopped, grew really fast, and then it was kind of hard to get back into it. So now I'm kind of going back slowly.
Wow. I mean, you don't, I mean, I think you're tall-ish. I don't know.
Thank you.
I mean, you're not short. Like, I don't
Yeah,
let me rephrase that. I don't think that your height is has been stunted. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay. How tall are you?
I'm 5'5".
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm good. But for a while, I was so concerned. I was the shortest person of all my friends in high school, and I would always look up at them and be like, man, I hope I get there one day.
So you're doing this now. You wanted to be fit in with the teenage crowd,
Yeah.
right? And so you stopped doing the stunt stuff, and then what happens next?
So then I was determined to do musical theater. At that time, too, I had a heart problem. So at that point, I'll never forget this. Shout out to Miss Wong at Covina High School. We were doing hurdles, and I was doing hurdles one day, and then my heart wouldn't slow down. So it was like I was still running for like 10 minutes after, and they found out after a long time that I had a heart problem. So I had to have heart surgery in high school. I had 2 by my senior year.
Wow.
And then I was like, well, you know, it's kind of a wake-up call when your heart just suddenly shoots up to my pulse was at 289 and then would shoot down to 30 within seconds. So I would almost pass out, or I would pass out. So after the surgeries, it was fine, but it puts things into perspective. So my life was suddenly like, I should pursue whatever I want because that was really scary and I have time, so I should do what I like. So I went into musical theater. I started training a lot and got to tour the U.S., or not so much the U.S. I got to tour New York and a couple other cities, and then went to China and the Philippines and sang over there, and went to Europe and sang classical music over there. And then after that, I started working, and I'd lost a lot of family members my last year of college doing musical theater. And so I didn't have the best coping strategy. And so I got really thin, and I think I weighed like 92 pounds at that point because I was struggling with a lot of family members going through different illnesses. So at that time, I got into a really bad car accident on my way to Disneyland, and I got sandwiched between 2 trucks on the freeway. And I ended up in the hospital for 3 days, had to relearn how to walk because I was in pain. And I remember this doctor looked at me when I went in, and he said, "You have chronic regional pain syndrome." And it was so rare, and he said, well, that's usually people that were in the military get this, so I don't understand how you got it, but you have it. And then he said, but you're really young. So it kind of led to, should we get a second opinion on this? Especially if it's so rare, you want to make sure that everything is accurate. So I went and saw a couple of doctors, and then they found a cyst inside my knee, and they said, well, that's the cause of the issue. That's why your leg's in so much pain. And it was just constant pain, constant burning. It would kind of give out a little bit, and I could feel it, but I was still at the point where I was walking just with a little limp. And then they made me go into testing and stuff like that. I ended up going into a bunch of different types of, not treatment, but things in the U.S., or at least in California, that are deemed necessary to do before anything else. So I tried a lot of those things, and then after a while, it didn't get better. And so they were still fighting a diagnosis. And then finally another doctor at UCLA, where I was going to get treated, said, no, you do have chronic regional pain syndrome.
Wow. I had never heard of that before, and before I started speaking to you. How rare is it?
I believe it's like 3% of the population has it.
And you said diagnosis. So is it diagnosed like through blood, or how's it diagnosed?
No, it's diagnosed. So it depends on who you ask. That's kind of the consensus that I've found so far. So a lot of the times it's symptom based and it's self-reporting. So they'll ask you what it feels like if it's burning. You literally feel like you're in a jacuzzi, but you're burning inside. And then it'll feel like sometimes like your bones are breaking. It's constant pain. And then your affected body parts, usually legs or arms, some people have it in other spots, but you end up feeling like it's red and swollen and double the size, and air will hurt. Anything can hurt.
Wow. So were you just tolerating this just because you had this background of, I can endure and overcome, or what was going on there?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a mix. I think it's one of those things where when you have to, you just do it. And the crazy part, I think, though, is that when you get diagnosed, they sit you down when you get your official diagnosis, and they say, look, you have a 50-50 shot at this. So we need you to get a therapist, we need you to get a psychiatrist, and you need to do something to cope. And it's scary in that moment because you really don't know what you're in for. You're just in constant pain, and you're trying to find some sort of outlet. So for me, it was a lot of, I'm glad that it was validated, that it was just the pain that was making everything else worse. But it was also so frightening to know that this is a reality. It's very odd in that moment.
A 50-50 shot at what?
At living.
And for what period of time?
So it really depends. There's some people that have had this for 20, 30 years, and they're just day by day. I mean, they're warriors. The fact that they can do that day by day is insane to me, and I'm so proud of them.
They're experiencing what you described every day?
Every single day. Yeah,
wow.
This disease doesn't let up. You have it every day of your life. You wake up in pain. You fall asleep if you can sleep in pain. A lot of the times you have a hard time sleeping. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just you have to just stick it out. You have to do it. You have to try and live a normal life. Because if not, then you will be one of the 50%. And that there's no shame in that. And I understand it. And it's odd when I think there's a stigma to it of if you can't survive this, you failed. But I don't think that's the case. I feel like it's something we need to destigmatize, especially with an illness like this. It's no one's fault. It happens. And sometimes if someone has to cope and they feel like that's their only out, then, I mean, I get it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't imagine, there must be people out there who are just dealing with pain and, without somebody acknowledging or affirming what they're going through, they're just going to keep living through it.
Yeah.
As if it's normal.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough that I found a group on Facebook, a support group, and it ended up helping me a lot. And there are a lot of people in there that are just saying, hey, I have a bad day today. They call it spoons. So you have a certain amount of spoons that you have each day, and you can only use them for certain things. Like, I have enough spoons to eat today by myself without getting sick, or I have enough spoons today to walk around my house without a cane, or I have a spoon today that's going to allow me to read and take a shower, and that's good enough. And I think that's a lot of it, is just you have to understand what your body's telling you, and then when you hit that point, enough is okay.
So you went to UCLA for a second opinion, and they affirmed that this is what you have.
Yeah.
And what were you doing then? Were you seeking to manage it? Were you seeking a third opinion? Like, where did your journey take you after that?
Yeah, I was seeking to manage it and try and mitigate any of the pain, at least as much as I could, because when you're at that point, I was probably at a 7 or 8 out of 10 every day. So I just wanted to go down like one level if possible, or anything would be great. So luckily I had a really good doctor, and I was blessed in that aspect where he was very affirming of everything, but also very helpful in solutions and helping me decide what the best outlook was or what the best choice was for me. But I also had to keep myself really busy at that point too, to fight it, because if I didn't want to sit in it too long. So when I first got diagnosed, I was taking 26 units in college and putting out an album. So I had no time to think. It was just a way to avoid pain mentally as much as I could. And then once I got into UCLA and everything, it was I have to work 40 hours a week or more just because I need to keep myself busy, and medical bills. But mainly, the more that I can keep my mind off it, the better.
Wow. So what did they do to help manage your pain?
So you get these spinal, not blocks, but they're like epidurals. So they'll put them in your spine, and then the first doctor I went to, he did I think it was like 4 over the span of a month.
You say that so casually, like
I
it's
know.
like no big deal. They just put this in your spine, and I'm like, no, what?
Yeah.
Doesn't that hurt?
I was knocked out for
Okay.
most of them, so I was really lucky. I didn't feel anything.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. You know what's funny is that so many people say that. They're like, you say these things so casually, and they're so scary to think about.
Yeah.
But again, when you're in that much pain, you're just, I don't want to look at the needle, just do it.
Okay.
Like 5 minutes of no pain would be great right now. So, but
yeah, sure.
But I was trying to avoid doing too many or try to avoid doing too much, and I didn't want to take painkillers.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Like my thoughts were they would just give you like opioids or something.
I can't take opioids, and I was against myself taking them at that point too.
Okay, so it would have been an option if
Yeah.
you chose that route.
Yeah.
Wow. So for some people who may get diagnosed with this and they choose that route, hopefully things work out well for them. But that seems also kind of scary.
Yeah. The one thing that they do give you is one medication that kind of sedates you a little bit. It's not so much to help the pain, it's just more to relax you. And that one's something pretty consistent with everybody that I've seen or met or talked to that has this. But other than that, quite a few people actually go without painkillers and just try and do other things as much as possible. There are other methods that they give you to try and avoid painkillers that may be a little more harmful in other ways, but I think it depends on the person too.
Wow. So you also found this group on Facebook.
Yeah.
And was that helpful?
Yeah. So I was doing a lot of research because I hit a point where 10 out of 10 every day of pain was just not going to happen.
So for someone who may not know that, like maybe their scale is different, what is a 10 out of 10? 10
out of 10 is I'm going to chop my leg off. I can't do this anymore kind of pain. Like I'm going insane. Please stop this. Like,
wow.
And after a while, you don't even cry. I think that's the weirdest part. You're just used to pain. So even now, I have a weird pain threshold where people will tell me that's supposed to hurt. And I'm like, no, but it doesn't. It's so weird. But yeah, 10 out of 10 pain. There are people that get amputated from this illness because they think that that's the best way to do it. But then they get phantom limb syndrome.
Wow.
And they end up struggling with this. And that there are people in the support group that I'm in that have that and that have struggled with amputation. And then it goes to another body part. So the support group's been great, and everybody exchanges the new things, new research, what doctors are saying, and that's how I got connected actually to the doctor in Italy that I went to. That helped me out.
So talk about that. What is this? Who is this doctor?
His name's Andrea Giusti. He's from Genoa, Italy, and he's done research on this for like 20 years, I believe, and he's helped so many patients. He actually did trials. He did trials in Italy, got the research together, gave it to the U.S., but you really want to go see him or go to Italy to get Noridronate, which is the medication that he uses. And he's so nice. He's one of the nicest and coolest doctors I've ever met in my life. So he asked me to go through a few different things before I got there. So I had to do a specific bone scan. I had to try a few different treatment options here before I could go there and kind of get approval from my doctors. But there were certain things here that I did. One of them was ketamine. I had to do it once to try and help this, and it didn't work.
Like horse tranquilizer?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a scary experience. Would not recommend. But it does help some people that have this, or some people that have depression or anxiety and are really struggling. It helps reduce it. So in theory, I completely understand why they did it, but at the end of the day, it was that or a spinal cord stimulator, which is like a hockey puck that they insert in your spine, and they put a needle through your spinal cord. So when I talked to him, I said, hey, I'm not going to do the spinal cord stimulator. I tried the ketamine that they offered me, and I'm never doing that again either. And I don't want to be on painkillers personally, so what do you think? And after a while, he ended up saying, sure, I'll take you, come to Italy, and we'll give you this infusion of Noridronate, and we'll help you out.
Is the infusion only available in Italy?
So the Noridronate, I believe, is available in a few countries in Europe, but for the most part, it's mainly in Italy. It's not in the U.S. So the U.S. has a different version called Pomidronate, and that's a slightly less intense version of it. They have one doctor I know in Irvine, one in Texas that does it. I don't know what city he's in. And then I believe there's one in Washington too. So there's a few doctors that you can look at that have Pomidronate.
And how many times do you have to receive this treatment?
It depends. It's person by person. So for me, after 4 days, the goal was to put me in remission, but we didn't know if that was possible. So remission was one of two things, either reduce or eliminate pain for now. And so the goal was eliminate, but I was okay with just reducing as much as possible. And so when I went into remission, he sat me down and we had a good conversation, and he said, listen, you can come back if it does come back and the pain is too much again, and we can do another session. But if not, just enjoy it as much as you can. So I know someone that's gone back, I think she's gone back twice now. Her name's Mims Gordon. She's the one that actually sent me over his information, and she was so nice. She's the reason that I got to Italy.
Like just sitting across from you, seeing you, hearing you, it all sounds very positive, but I can't imagine the mindset of a person who's experiencing this with the outlook on life and what that must have gone through. Are you willing to share what
of course
that was like? Because maybe there are people out there who would benefit from hearing what that was like and maybe resonating from your story with your story.
Yeah, it was really scary. There were definitely a lot of low moments, but I tried to fight it so much, and I had to give myself days of just being sad and being depressed and allowing myself to feel it and let it pass. But I had to make friends with depression at that point. I had to understand that that was okay to feel, and it was okay to feel anxious. It was okay to feel angry about the fact that I had it and I was fighting it. And pain's interesting because what I've learned from it is that you can be incredibly positive through it and do your best, but you also have to allow yourself to accept that it's happening. And so to not get stuck in it and not get stuck in a mindset where I was scared and thought, this is it for me. I mean, I didn't think I would make it to 30. I had it set in my head, and I think a lot of it was just looking at family members and saying, man, I don't think I could do this to them. I don't want them to think they had any fault in this. And there were real conversations had where it's not anybody's fault if I can't do it. It's just something that I'm battling. And as much as I tried to stay positive, and as much as I tried to also sit with it, I learned a lot about myself in those moments. And a lot of that is, how much can I look at the bad and try and take it as a learning lesson? How much can I find gratitude in that? And it's weird to think, but when you're in those moments, the gratitude of, I didn't fall today. I could put on socks today and be okay. I could go outside, even though it's raining, even though my leg hurts 10 times more right now than normal, which is crazy, I could still function. And so you become really, really grateful for such little things. And I think I held on to that as much as possible. And now looking at it from a different side, looking at it from remission, there's a lot of guilt that comes with remission that a lot of times people don't want to talk about or people don't address, because you still have the gratitude. You still have those moments of, I can walk today. I mean, I'm wearing shoes right now. Like, that's so amazing. Before I was in Crocs for 2 years because I couldn't put any shoes on. And I was so specific about socks and so specific about pants. And now to have those moments, I'm still incredibly grateful. And to not be in a wheelchair anymore, too, just blows my mind every day still. But in that, I also understand that there's guilt in surviving it, and there's guilt in seeing other people that are fighting it still every single day and haven't gotten relief. And it's a bit of why me, but I feel like that is also self-indulgent in some way. So the other part of it is, what can I do to help those people? And what can I do now that I have the mental process, now that I have the space to think outside of pain? How can I make this easier for them, or what can I do? So I think that's been my new mission since I went into remission. Is it's scary, and people often think that they're alone in it. And people often think they're alone in the sadness and in the gratitude and in the happy times and in the doctor's appointments when you're sitting there and you know it's bad news. But I think that you have to hold on to something. And if you can hold on for dear life, then you're going to be okay. Well,
thank you for sharing that. Can you expand on what you mean but when you say you wouldn't make it to 30?
Yeah. It's funny. When I first started feeling the pain, I kind of wondered how long I could just go through it and be okay and still do the things I wanted to do. But your mental health takes such a dip, where it was really dependent on Italy and really dependent on, if I don't get a little relief, I can't, and it became something that suicide is a big part of this illness. It's called the suicide disease. It's another nickname for it. So once you have that thought process, and once you have this is the only way out of it, I really did think, I wouldn't see 30. That was my timeline. And like I said, I had my family in my mind. I have a great partner that's stuck with me through everything. That's just been a great rock for me. And I can't imagine I'm turning 30 next month.
Oh,
so
yeah, congratulations.
I'm really excited. So thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had that timeline in my head where it wasn't a goal necessarily, but I had to be realistic with myself.
I would imagine with a diagnosis like that they know this, and if it's named this as a disease, they try to surround you with a support network. Did you have that? You mentioned your partner, but your family, were they aware of this as a possibility? And
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were all aware, and they were really nice about it. I will say my parents, we ended up adopting a system where it was, hey, if I fall, you can laugh. It's okay. Like, I almost needed them to keep the humor up with me, because I needed to feel like you have to just laugh at these situations. You have to find some humor in something, even if it's self-deprecating. It's just, it has to be funny. So they were really good about the support, and I had family members that were reaching out. There were a few people, ironically, that were upset that I didn't look more sick. And I think that's very odd when you tell someone that gets diagnosed with an illness, like, you don't look sick. You don't look sad. And I was like, you can't tell what I'm feeling internally just because I'm not crying constantly in front of you or saying, woe is me, or I'm so upset. It doesn't mean I'm not feeling it. It just means that I would rather put on a face and say, I'm here, I'm fighting it. We're just going to pretend it doesn't exist, and let's go and let's do everything that we can do right now. Yeah.
Reminds me, my wife would always comment, like maybe our youngest would say something about a homeless person, that they look, clean, and they look like they have, maybe they even have a phone, and my wife would be like, well, you have no idea. Maybe they just lost everything yesterday. Yeah. Like, you just have no idea what people are going through based on how they look.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so weird because, you could have support systems, and then they hear a comment like that and they don't know how to respond. And I'm like, you just give it back to them. Like, what would you like her to look like? Would you like her to cry in front of you? And I remember at the time, because I couldn't afford things, it's so expensive to do these procedures here in the U.S. It was expensive to get to Italy. One of my friends started a GoFundMe for me. And I remember they saw a picture of me and they're like, yeah, we don't believe it. And I was like, I'm in a wheelchair right now. What do you mean you don't believe it? What do you need from me to do this?
Wow.
So they asked me to post a picture. Literally, I was asked to post a picture with me crying, or after I cried, by someone. And I said, this is really the image you want me to portray, is someone that, is outwardly showing how I feel? You wouldn't rather just see me fighting with a smile on my face and saying, hey, it's okay. We're going to be fine. We're going to do this. We're going to keep going. I mean, they didn't know the 30 was a thing for me. I didn't really want to tell people that. Sure. I wanted it to be very much personal and private, and I wanted people to see me as someone that was fighting. It's the only way I could keep going.
Well, I'm not surprised, but it's still shocking to be confronted with someone in the U.S. diagnosed with something like this, and you still would struggle or have difficulty affording treatment to save your life.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah, and it's crazy because there's no, like I said, there's no real treatment here. There are medications that can help, and it's different for everybody, but to get any sort of the treatments that I'd found, it was like $35,000 to $50,000 for me to try and go to another state to get another type of treatment. But in Italy, it was $7,000, and that's including my hotel and the medication and my flight. It was insane. And I had really good food, and the doctor literally told me, hey, if you want to bring a beer or a pizza in here during your treatment, that's fine. Just hang out and relax. Wow. I've never heard that in my life.
Yeah, the difference in cost is really striking when you hear things like that.
Yeah.
I guess that's maybe a conversation for another show, but Kelly, we ask each guest to bring an item of significance with them. What did you bring with you today?
So I brought a nunchuck. So this was my first nunchuck, actually, at my karate studio in Covina. This thing has been through a lot, as you can clearly tell. So when I was a kid, this was the first weapon I learned, and this was in the 3 months that my parents said, you have to stay here, right? I was good at karate, and those were my literal secret weapon. But I had a judge one time that was so upset that I was beating one of his students that he yanked it. And he pulled it so hard that those strings actually came out. And then he handed it back to me and said, here you go.
Oh, wow.
Because they were supposed to test it before you did a form or whatever with your nunchucks or whatever weapon you were using. So once he broke it, I was stuck and I didn't know what to do. So I had to pull out another weapon and make something up on the spot. Keep in mind, I was 11 years old thinking, okay, well, I got to be my own karate instructor. No one's here, so let's figure this out. And I ended up winning. And my dad took these and said, well, this is never going to happen again. So he actually put nails inside of it that hold these strings in. So no matter how hard you pull, you can't pull it out.
Wow.
So it was cool.
I mean, the length seems short.
Yeah, I have really tiny wrists. So these are kids' nunchucks. And
Okay.
yeah.
I played around with nunchucks before, only just playing with them. And so, like, you know, to have it flipper over my hand, it needs to be at least that long, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you want to do it on your wrist. It makes it a little bit easier, and you're kind of just doing this with your hands.
Do you have any video of you doing it?
I do. It's on my Instagram. Yeah, it's on my Instagram. There's one of the things that people were upset about was that I pulled these weapons out during COVID, and I already had this. And I was like, well, I'm just going to mess around. And you can see a knee brace on one of the videos. And then another video, I was like, I'm already in pain, and it's not going to do anything, so might as well just have fun and see what happens. And people were so upset. They were like, you can't move like that with it. And granted, after a while, I really couldn't. I was on a cane. So I would still do nunchucks just standing there or commas or things like that. And yeah, I just posted on Instagram.
A comma, is that like a sickle? Or what is a comma?
So it's basically, it has a stick and then there's a blade that goes like that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
They're farming tools, right?
I believe they were, yeah.
To like cut vegetables or grain or something. Wow. Thank you for bringing that. That's really cool. So your father made sure that was never going to happen again with that.
Yeah, my dad, I feel like my parents were such strong supporters of me when I was doing martial arts, especially because my dad would be there on the ring side with a speaker to play the music that I needed for any of my forms, but also because he was always checking the weapons and he was always there like, hey, your kick was not strong. That punch was weak, and I could see that. And then my mom and my little sister would be on the sides either cheering or she would be the hype man. So it was cool. He was great. He really helped me with the weapons. He helped me when I started tricking and when I was doing backflips and things like that. And we'd be outside on our front lawn and he'd be like, nope, your hip didn't go up high enough.
Wow. Thank you for bringing that in. I'm curious, is there a genetic component to this, or how does one, is it just random that someone would have this?
Yeah, it's really odd. So I think it depends on who you ask. So in Italy, they see it as a bone marrow disorder. So your bone marrow is going away from inside somewhere.
Bone marrow disorder.
Yeah, that's what I was told. Okay. So your bone marrow is going away. So mine, when I got there and I got the medication, I found out how far it was going up my body, because I thought it was just in my knee and shooting down to my ankle, and then it started shooting up to my hip. But once the medication kicked in, it actually went up from my foot all the way up halfway on my spine. So what we know is common with everybody is that everybody that I've met that's diagnosed has some sort of PTSD and had some sort of traumatic experience that triggered it. And by traumatic, it can be anything as simple as one woman I met in Italy, actually, she's incredible. It was a snow boot was too tight, and it caused this. And then some are car accidents, some are sport-related injuries. But we do know PTSD, an injury, and we don't know necessarily the genetics. In the U.S., it's a sympathetic nervous system disorder. So something is attacking your body because it sees that there's some sort of, I don't know what to call it. It sees that there's something wrong with your body, so it starts attacking it. So that's why you have so much pain, and that's why you swell up and turn red, because your body's constantly trying to fight the thing it sees as wrong.
I see. I suspected that there was a component of that. Was the PTSD in your case? Was there any PTSD, or was it the accident that was the trauma? In your opinion?
Yeah, I definitely had PTSD. So, and it was from a non-related incident to the car accident that had happened before. But once the car accident hit, it was just that triggered it even more.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned that the car accident sort of maybe reignited this PTSD, but were you aware of what that may have been from before?
Yeah, I knew that it had stemmed from a really bad relationship. So it had been a really abusive relationship that I was in. So, and that was a lot of the reason too, where between losing family members, getting out of that relationship, and having a lot of lines crossed in that relationship, to put it kind of lightly, that really gave me PTSD. So I was coping, again, in not the best ways, but once I hit the car accident, that's when I think I started getting back on track.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you aware that it was PTSD that you were experiencing from that relationship?
No, I didn't. I was naive in thinking that PTSD was something that you got from war. Yeah. And I studied psychology, and I still thought PTSD was just something from either constant abuse or from war. And naively, I thought that I was just going through it. I didn't have a name for it. And I think once I started really diving into therapy and addressing the situation, addressing the things that happened in that relationship, and putting words to things, that's when things started changing for me.
Wow. I'm curious to know more about that, and also to share my own experience, but let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
At WarmuthLaw, they believe that just because you speak a foreign language, come from a different culture, or simply don't know how to navigate the legal system, that should not prevent you from compensation from injury or receiving benefits. Their multicultural staff have been helping SGVers like you for over 38 years. Visit law888.com or call them at 626-784-7017 and tell them you heard about them on this podcast.
All right, we're back with Kelly. Kelly, before the break, we were talking about this PTSD that you had experienced. Yeah. Before we get back into that, I want to shift gears a little bit. When we come back from the break, we like to ask questions from this card deck. It's called Icebreakers. Scott's not here, so he can't complain if they're too penetrating. They're supposed to be fun. So
okay, cool. Let's do it.
He's like, that wasn't lighthearted. You can choose to answer it or not. Okay. And it's just for a way for the audience to get to know you and to get to know me a little bit better. So the question is, how did you meet your best friend?
Oh my gosh, we met in college doing musical theater.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Who's your best friend?
So his name's Garrett. Shout out to Garrett. I don't know if you guys experience with your friends, but it's the people that you meet that you're friendly with that end up becoming your best friends later, and there's always a reason why they suddenly just become your best friends, and then you wonder why you weren't best friends the entire time. Yeah. And we have the best friend syndrome where we don't hug or anything like that. That's how I know he's my best friend, because it's just, we're like, okay, bye. Every time we see each other. Musical theater is a big thing.
There's a tie in here to what we were talking about before. So I'm going to say I met my best friend online. This is my wife, and I would say she's still unlike anybody else I've ever met before, and she speaks in a way that I've never met before either. And some people say that we have a similar way of speaking, but certainly our values are what unite us. But where we met, and it's been shared on the podcast before, was in a support group for survivors of narcissistic and sociopathic abuse. Yeah. So I escaped that relationship previously in the throes of PTSD. I had lost like 35 pounds. I was trying to figure out what had happened to me, all the terminology, like learning of what was done, being able to label the tactics. It was frightening to come out of it and see what had happened, what I accepted, and then but I'm much stronger for it. So is you say a relationship, so you must have experienced something similar like that then.
Yeah. Narcissists are very good at making you feel like it's all your fault. And it's interesting how they do it. And I don't know if it was the same with your experience, but they're good at finding your insecurities and really weaponizing them against you. And they're very good at playing the good guy in front of everybody else.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, part of the reason why my wife, we met in a support group, and the instant bond was nobody knows what it's like unless you've gone through it. The craziness, like how, like you said, someone presents in one way and you're like, no, that's not how they are. That's not how it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want to rehash that whole thing, but I just wanted to say that I'm familiar with that kind of experience and know that it can definitely result in something like that.
Yeah.
PTSD at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for our audience, I forgot to ask this last show, how did you meet your best friend? Let us know in the comments and we'll share it on a future episode. So you obviously present now as someone has a lot of strength, who's gone through this very difficult thing, and you want to share this experience and your journey with others who may be struggling, right? Is that what you're doing now?
Yeah.
Yeah. What else are you doing?
I'm doing a lot. I feel like I stuck with the whole I need to keep myself busy and do 1,000 things at once. And now that I have even more energy, I'm really trying to spread it as much as possible. So starting to work with nonprofits a lot is really fun, and starting to raise awareness more for this. My grandfather actually he passed away this year, but he had a foundation that is starting that is going to help people get to Italy.
Wow.
So that's the goal, is to not only keep his legacy, but also to make sure that people get help from this. So it's kind of in the early stages right now of let's get this thing going and let's try and get at least one person each year to Italy.
Wow.
So between that and work and everything else, it's something I really enjoy.
Wow. And are you staying connected with the community primarily through the Facebook group?
Yeah.
How many members are in there?
There's a few thousand, actually.
A few thousand?
Yeah, and some of them are actually parents of young kids that have it.
Oh, wow.
And some of them are also people who had a family member that had it and they passed away, unfortunately. So it's them kind of keeping in communication with everybody because they understood that was something important.
Wow. In addition to guiding people towards the treatment that you found successful for yourself, do you find yourself having the conversations about their own trauma that they went through?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. And everybody has their own experience when it comes to rare illnesses or when it comes to something as emotional as pain. And it's going to be different for everyone. But I think there's a universal oddball that is both the desire to want to keep going and the desire to how can I support everybody else, and the other desire that's how do I stop this? And there's a few different ways you can stop it. I mean, there's the I can share as much information as I can and be a support person and try and raise awareness and try and get some more people doing pomegranate in the US and make it more accessible, or connect as many people with resources. And that's what MIMS has really done for all of us, is that she created this platform that has new research constantly, has new doctors to call, and has new things for everybody to really share. So I think in a lot of ways, when you're in it, you're doing the best that you can to support everybody else. And when you're out of it, you're still doing everything you can to support everybody else, but you just have a different hat you're wearing.
Wow. It sounds like you're definitely using the correct antidote for negative thoughts or thinking, which is an attitude of gratitude, which sounds very simple, but if you can fill your mind with that, then it's not filled with other thoughts, right?
Yeah. You know what? Something that I've learned too, when you get better or when you stop feeling as much, it's almost like a rubber band snapping. And I'd never heard it explained that way. But it's almost like the same thing with coming out of a bad relationship, or the same thing with coming out of some sort of traumatic experience, is that once you're on the other side, your brain hasn't caught up with your body. Your body's in almost this limbo of, I experienced this, and I'm still holding on to all the emotions, and all of a sudden I'm letting go, and your brain's like, but where is the thing that I should be hyper-focused on? Where is the thing that took up so much of my capacity? And it's odd. And it's a months-long process, I feel like, where your brain hasn't quite caught up to your body saying you can relax.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever heard of somatic healing practitioners?
No.
No?
No.
The work of Peter Levine? Oh, wow. Wow. I'll
Yeah?
share with you after that. Yeah. It's to take the body through the trauma so that you don't get trapped in there because the body has to process it.
Yeah.
I'll share
It's like
with you
EDMR
after.
then. The eyes and the tapping.
It's a similar thing.
Okay.
Yes, I think. I mean, I'm not an expert in it, but I'll share that with you. So it's called somatic healing or somatic healing practitioner. Anyway, you have the lethal combination for someone who's you seem to be empathetic, and you're highly competitive and want to win. So that means that you would have stayed in that relationship thinking that you could make it better or that it would get better. And I'm only saying that because like that was me, right? Like you're like, oh no. Is that true? Is that a true assessment?
I think that there was a part of that where in the beginning, because you see the signs pretty early on, you see certain things that you know are not okay. At
and
least
you just
I did.
excused
And
them.
I excused it. Exactly.
Yeah. Or you talked yourself out of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I stayed in it much longer than I would have. I think by the end I was already kind of out of it, but I needed, in a terrible way, I needed something that would force me out. And I unfortunately got it, but it was the wake-up call I needed to really say, nope, I'm out.
Wow.
Yeah.
My relationship put me in the hospital on my birthday with the needing 21 stitches, and I still didn't get out.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, so I know how challenging it can be. So, yeah.
21 stitches?
Yeah, 13 internal and 13 internal, 8 external, I think. Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm
anyway.
glad you got out.
Yeah. I mean, me too. I'm definitely glad. So, but anyway, thank you so much for sharing, all of your story and what you're doing. And I think the community that you're supporting and helping to get to Italy is really going to benefit from that. We're going to move on to the final portion of the show where we get to learn some things that you like in the San Gabriel Valley. So Kelly, this is called the SGV3, and we ask you to share with our audience your 3 favorite places or experiences in the San Gabriel Valley.
Yeah, so one of them was the karate studio where this nunchuck came from. It was in Covina off Azusa Avenue. It was Red Dragon Karate. That one, 10 out of 10, the most wild memories of my life. We had basically military training as kids there, but at the end of the day, it introduced me to something that I loved. So I'm grateful for it.
Is it still there?
No, actually, I don't know what's in the building now, but there may have been some definite spots where you could go back if they had the old carpet there and be like, yeah, that was a blood mark. That was this.
Wow.
It's okay. Oh, I
For
took
little
it
kids.
seriously. Yeah. No, I was ready, and it wasn't because I was good at sparring at all by any means. It was just because I had swords at my hand. They were tough. It was, you're gonna get smacked in the leg with bamboo if you're not bending your knees right and doing a horse stance correctly, or that hand was bad, so you're gonna get smacked. So yeah, I marked my territory, I guess, in there with some blood and sweat marks.
Wow. Okay. Remind me where it is so I don't sign my child up. That sounds intense.
It was so fun.
It's a different time though too, right? It's a
yeah,
different
it
time.
was a different time. I mean, and again, when you're competitive, you're just like, yeah, this is what I should be doing. This is a good sign. As an adult, you're like, excuse me?
Wow, okay. So what's number 2?
Number 2 is the West Covina Public Library. That was one of my favorite spots. I was really into reading. Oh, I'm still really into reading, but as a kid, I was just reading like crazy. There was one summer where I read 2,000 books at the library. Yeah.
What?
2,000.
Was this also a competition?
No.
Just for fun?
It was just, well, I think part of it may have been subconsciously because I wanted to see if I could beat a record. And so I just went for it. And then I threw out the number because as a kid, I was like, yeah, I can do 2,000. That makes sense. That's easy. And it wasn't like small books because I thought small books were dumb as a kid, which is so ridiculous. I didn't want to read the books my friends were reading because I thought that I could read more elevated books. So I was reading Charles Dickens and reading Anne of Green Gables. And, I was reading Moby Dick as a kid. And I'm in elementary school. And
what?
They were saying, like, why don't you want to read, Dr. Seuss? Let's all read Dr. Seuss together. And I was like, it's too easy.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so the West Covina Public Library I loved because they had access to so many different books. And then when I was in 2nd grade, that's when I started reading other books that my friends were reading because I was competitive at that. But But for the public library, that was just me.
Okay. Charles Dickens and Anne of Green Gables, those are some of my wife's favorite also.
Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist is one of, you probably shouldn't enjoy that book so much as like a 7 to 8 year old, but I loved that book so much. Yeah.
And what's number 3?
Number 3 is actually, so in Covina, off of Grand Avenue, there's Serenity Foster Care. Have you guys heard of it?
No.
Okay, so Serenity Foster Care is a foster care group in Covina, and they have been gracious enough, Manisha has actually been gracious enough to invite me to come do music with the kids. And they don't really know this entirely, but these kids have changed my life already. So we go in and we had music with Miss Kelly. So we ended up getting a couple of different groups, and the parents came in. And there's one kid, I'm never going to forget him. I think we started with Disney music, because I came in thinking, yeah, the kids are going to like the classics. I thought I was cool. I was bringing in, Little Mermaid and Hercules, and they're like, we want Frozen, and okay, Moana's okay, but, do more cool stuff. So I had a few things in my back pocket, and then she said, hey, do you know You Are My Sunshine? And there was this little boy that had been hiding the entire time from me. He did not want to make eye contact. He did not want to be seen. And so I was trying to include him in everything. But the minute she said, do you know You Are My Sunshine? This kid lit up and said, my name's Sunshine? I'm Sunshine? And he was so happy. We did the song twice. And by the end, he was jamming out on the little drum pads. He was singing along. He was dancing. And it was the cutest thing in the world. And these kids ended up going from super shy to, by the end, I had them and the parents standing up and dancing. And they picked whatever song they wanted. There's a point during the music where I would say, okay, tell me a song. And I would just pull it up and learn it on the spot and play guitar with them. And they had so much fun. And it was just the coolest thing to be able to experience. And the center is so nice. I mean, the house that they have over there is beautiful. And it's nice to see how cool they have it for the kids and all the programs that they do. I love it. So that's one of my favorite spots.
And the name again?
It's Serenity Foster Care in Covina.
Serenity Foster Care.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing those with us. Kelly, thank you for coming on the show and for sharing your story with us and our audience. If people want to get in touch with you and or support your cause, what's the best way to do that?
Instagram at It's Me Kelly G is usually the best way. If not, yeah,
It's Me
Instagram is
Kelly G?
probably the best. Yeah, I
Okay.
wasn't inventive when I made that, and it just kind of stuck.
Hey, that's okay. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the show. We appreciate it. And the best of luck for you and the things that you're working on to support these people going through what you're going through.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, there you go. Thanks for staying with us and tuning into this episode. It's encouraging to hear another person who has gone through something similar, especially if it's a struggle, and coming out the other end, better for it. And then I think the last part of that is to turn their experience around to help other people. I think then it becomes like full circle where you're turning that negative into a positive. So I hope you got something from this episode. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Check out our full catalog of episodes on our website, mysgv.net. And until next week, we'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us on the MySGV podcast. Check out more of our content on our website, mysgv.net. This show was produced by Russell Mono and edited by Victoria Allers of Kind Monster Productions. If you'd like to join us next week as we capture and share more stories from our diverse community, feel welcome.
Nice matter. No, kind of matter.